The reluctant warrior. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the war-torn battlefield. The sound of distant explosions echoed in the air, but the soldier stood still, his eyes focused on the horizon. Around him, the chaos of the war raged, but he remained calm, his expression a mix of resolve and weariness. His name was Captain Raynor, and he had always believed in one thing. Never raise your hand to a woman, Dot. It wasn't some old-fashioned principle or a rule taught to him in training. It was something he felt deeply, something that made him different from many of the soldiers around him. Raynor had been raised in a world where strength was measured by power, but he had never believed that strength meant violence against the vulnerable. His belief had been tested many times in the past, and every time he had stayed true to it. As a soldier, Raynor had fought in many battles, faced countless enemies, and seen more death than he cared to remember. But no matter how brutal the war had become, he never raised his fist to a woman. His fellow soldiers called him weak, but he didn't care. It was the one thing that kept him grounded in a world that had lost its moral compass. Today, however, Raynor was facing a situation that was about to challenge everything he believed in. The mission was simple: infiltrate an enemy stronghold, neutralize the threat, and rescue the hostages. But there was one problem. The enemy wasn't like anything Raynor had ever fought before. They were not human, but something far more dangerous, an alien species that was both brutal and cunning. Their warriors were known for their immense strength and savage tactics, and the rumors spoke of one warrior in particular, a female commander who led the fiercest of their forces. The soldiers had told Raynor about her, how she towered over most men, how her strength and skill in battle were legendary. Some said she was a monster. Others said she was a warrior unlike any other. But one thing was certain. No one had ever seen her lose Dot as Raynor and his team approached the enemy camp. His thoughts remained focused on the mission. He had to do what was necessary to protect his people. The hostages had to be freed, and the alien forces had to be stopped. There was no room for hesitation or mercy. He had done this before. He had killed without hesitation when necessary. But today was different. Today, he would face an enemy that didn't follow the same rules. They moved through the dense forest, the sounds of battle growing louder with every step. The tension in the air was thick, and Raynor could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on him. His team was ready. They had trained for this moment, prepared for the fight ahead. But none of them knew what awaited them inside. The enemy camped Dot as they neared the entrance. The sounds of the battle grew more intense. Then suddenly Raynor froze. A shadow appeared in the distance, a figure moving swiftly and silently through the smoke-filled air. The team tensed, weapons at the ready. But it wasn't the enemy soldiers that had caught Raynor's attention. It was her. The alien woman stepped into the clearing, her towering form cutting through the smoke like a ghost. She was taller than any man Raynor had ever seen, her armor shining under the dim light of the setting sun. Her eyes glowed with a fierce intensity, and she held a massive weapon in her hands, one that could easily crush a man's skull with a single blow. The team stood still, unsure of how to react. Raynor felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand. Up, he had never faced anything like this before. The woman was no mere soldier. She was a force of nature, a being of raw power and precision. And she was standing right in front of them, daring them to make a move. The air felt thick with tension. Raynor's hand hovered over his weapon, but he didn't draw it. He wasn't sure what to do. Everything inside him screamed that he should be ready to fight, to protect his team. But something about her presence, something about the way she stood there, made him hesitate. "Move," she commanded, her voice deep and powerful. "If you want to survive, you'll need to do more than hide behind your weapons." Raynor didn't move. His mind raced, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never been afraid of an enemy before, but this was different. The way she spoke, the way she moved, it was as if she was in control of everything around her. She wasn't just a threat, she was a challenge. "Who are you?" Raynor asked, his voice steady despite the growing fear. The woman smiled, but it wasn't a smile of kindness. It was a grin of calculation, of understanding. "I am the one who will break you," she said simply. "And you will fight me to the end." Raynor felt his chest tighten. He had never hit a woman in his life. It was a rule he had lived by. But this ... this was different. She was no ordinary woman. She was an alien warrior, towering over him, a living embodiment of everything he had sworn to never strike. And yet, here she was, daring him to do what he had always avoided. "Hit me," she said, her voice almost a whisper now. "Your life depends on how hard you strike." Raynor's breath caught in his throat. What was she asking? What kind of challenge was this? For the first time in his life, Raynor felt the weight of his code slipping away. This wasn't just a fight, it was a test of everything he believed in. Would he strike? Would he break his own rule for survival? The moment hung in the air like a storm, and Raynor had no idea how he was going to survive it. The dilemma, the air around Captain Raynor felt heavy, charged with an unnatural tension. He stood in the clearing, his weapon still holstered, his eyes locked on the towering alien woman in front of him. Her challenge echoed in his mind like a drumbeat. "Hit me. Your life depends on how hard you strike." Raynor's pulse quickened, and a cold sweat began to form on his brow. Everything inside him screamed to reject this, to refuse to lower himself to the act of violence against a woman, no matter her race or size. He had always been a man of honor. His personal code, shaped by years of training and experience, was clear: never strike a woman. Yet here he stood, facing an enemy that seemed to exist outside of any moral framework he understood. She stepped closer, her towering frame casting a long shadow over him. There was no fear in her eyes, only confidence, almost as if she were daring him to make the first move. Her voice was low and powerful, like a whisper of impending doom. "You hesitate," she observed, the slight tilt of her head suggesting amusement. "Why? Are you afraid of a challenge? Or is it that you are bound by some misguided sense of honor?" Raynor clenched his fists, his mind battling with itself. Honor, duty, survival, they were all colliding, pulling him in different directions. He had fought wars, seen friends die in his arms, and lost pieces of his soul with each battle. But this was different. This wasn't just a fight. This wasn't about winning or losing. It was about something far more personal. "I don't want to fight you," Raynor said, his voice strained. He was surprised at the steadiness of his words, considering the storm raging inside him. "I don't want to hurt you." The alien woman's lips curled into a small, calculating smile. "You think I care whether you want to hurt me?" She sighed, her tone low and mocking. "This isn't about what you want. This is about survival. You will strike. And how hard you strike will determine whether you leave here alive. Your people's fate is tied to this moment." Raynor's throat tightened. The reality of the situation slammed into him like a ton of bricks. The hostages, his team, his duty to protect them. All of it rested on what would happen in the next few moments. If he didn't do what she asked, if he didn't prove himself in the way she demanded, everything would be lost. The women and children they had come to rescue, their lives would be forfeit. And yet ... how could he? His hand twitched near his sidearm, but he didn't draw it. That wasn't what she was asking. It wasn't just a fight to the death. This was a test of character. She wanted to break him. She wanted him to give in, to destroy the one thing that had kept him grounded through every battle. His honor. The thought of striking her, of delivering a blow that would tear away everything he stood for, filled him with disgust. But then there was the other side of him, the soldier who had sworn an oath to protect, to fight for the innocent. He thought about the hostages trapped behind enemy lines, their lives hanging by a thread. He thought about his comrades, who would face this same woman if he didn't act. She would not hesitate to kill them. And what would happen to them if they refused? Raynor's mind raced, his heart torn between the man he had been and the warrior he had been trained to be. He had faced overwhelming odds before, but this was different. This was not just a fight for victory. This was a fight for his soul. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if shutting out the world. He tried to center himself, to find some clarity amid the storm. When he opened his eyes again, the alien woman was still there, watching him, waiting for his decision. Her stance had not changed. She was still imposing, still in control, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of respect, maybe? Or was it simply the cold calculation of a predator watching its prey? "I will not hit you," Raynor said, his voice quiet but firm. "I don't care what happens. I will not break my code." The alien woman's eyes narrowed. "You will die then," she said, her voice ice cold. "Your code won't save you here. It's a weakness, and it will be your undoing." The words stung, but Raynor didn't flinch. He had always believed that honor, even in the face of destruction, was what separated them from the chaos of the universe. If he gave up that belief now, what would he be? Another soldier, another pawn in a never-ending war? No, he would stay true to himself, no matter the cost. The alien woman's expression softened ever so slightly, but there was no warmth in it. "Very well," she said. "If you will not fight me, then we will see how far your honor gets you." She stepped back, her enormous weapon still in hand, but she didn't raise it. Instead, she gave him one final look, one that seemed to carry the weight of 100 battles. "If you survive this, human," she said, "you may just prove to me that your species has more to offer than I thought." Raynor stood there, his chest rising and falling with every breath. He had made his choice. He would not strike her, no matter the consequences. But what would happen now? Could his refusal to fight be enough to save him, or would it seal his fate? The alien woman was a force of nature, and Raynor had no idea what she had in store for him next. But one thing was certain: this fight was far from over. This part builds on Raynor's internal conflict and sets up the tension between his moral beliefs and the brutal realities of survival. It leaves the audience on edge, wondering what will happen next. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments or continuation. The test of strength. Raynor stood his ground, his heart pounding in his chest. The alien woman, towering over him, had taken a step back, as if evaluating him with a predator's cold assessment. She had given him a chance to prove his strength of character. But now the situation was spiraling out of control. He had refused to strike her, and in doing so, he had placed himself and his team at the mercy of someone who didn't care for human honor or codes. The silence between them stretched on, heavy and uncomfortable. The air felt thick with the tension of an unspoken challenge. The woman's massive weapon still hung at her side, but she made no move to attack. Instead, she simply observed him, her eyes never leaving his face. Raynor swallowed hard, trying to steady his nerves. His refusal to fight hadn't come without consequence, and the thought of the hostages, helpless and awaiting rescue, loomed large in his mind. What had he done? Could he really stand by his beliefs when the lives of innocent people were on the line? "You're still alive, human," the woman said finally, her voice low, almost thoughtful. "I'm curious to see if your beliefs will protect you when the real test begins." Raynor felt his chest tighten. The real test? What did she mean by that? He had already made his stand, had already made the choice to hold on to his code. But what would happen next? Would she throw him into battle? Would she make him fight for survival in a way he had never imagined? "I don't need to fight you to prove myself," Raynor said, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "I've already made my choice. I don't want to hurt you." The woman's lips curled into a smile, but it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hurt me?" she repeated. "You're mistaken if you think I'm here for your mercy. I'm not here to take pity on you. This is not about you hurting me. This is about you surviving or failing." Without warning, she took a step forward. Her movements were fluid, almost effortless. The ground seemed to tremble beneath her, and Raynor instinctively took a step back. The sheer power radiating from her was overwhelming. He had seen enemies. Before, powerful enemies, but none like this. She wasn't just a warrior. She was a force of nature. "You refuse to fight," she said, her tone almost condescending. "But I'm giving you another choice. You'll fight me now, but not with your fists. You'll fight with your mind." Raynor's brow furrowed in confusion. "My mind?" The alien woman's smile deepened. "Yes, we will see how far your honor gets you when your survival depends on your ability to adapt. I'll give you one test. Fail it, and you'll never see your people again. Succeed, and I'll spare your life." Raynor's pulse quickened. He didn't like the sound of this, but he knew there was no other way out. His refusal to strike her had already set things in motion, and there was no turning back now. If he was going to survive this, he had to play by her rules. The woman stepped back and raised her hand, gesturing to the battlefield around them. Suddenly, the ground beneath Raynor's feet began to shift. The air turned thick with the sound of machinery, and the sky above darkened with the faint outline of distant ships. "You've heard of the purifiers, haven't you?" she asked, her voice cool. "I'll give you a chance to prove your worth. The ships overhead carry our enemies, the purifiers, who despise everything you stand for. They've already begun their assault on your world. The question is, will you be able to stop them, or will you let them destroy everything?" Raynor's eyes widened as the realization hit him. The alien woman wasn't just testing his physical strength or his resolve. She was testing his ability to think, to lead, to make impossible decisions in the heat of battle. The purifiers weren't just a myth, they were real, and they were cunning. "Time is running out," the woman continued, her eyes glinting. "You'll have to stop them before they reach your people. You have the weapons, the strategy. But can you work with them? Or will your ideals be your downfall?" Raynor's mind raced. He had been trained for combat, for the brutal realities of war. But this was something else entirely. He had always held to his code, believed that peace could be achieved without sacrificing his morality. Now, the woman was asking him to choose between that code and the survival of his people. The pressure was suffocating. Every decision he made could have catastrophic consequences. Could he lead his people to safety without sacrificing everything he believed in? Or would his hesitation cost them their lives? Raynor took a deep breath and surveyed the battlefield. The enemy was closing in, their ships descending upon the planet like a swarm of locusts. His mind flashed through strategies, battle plans, but every plan felt like it came with a moral compromise. There was no clear path forward, just 1,000 choices, each with its own risk. "Do you understand?" the woman asked, watching him closely. "Survival is about making decisions, and the longer you hesitate, the more people will die." Raynor's fists clenched, his mind swirling with doubt and fear. The woman's words struck deep. This wasn't just a physical fight. This was a battle for everything he stood for. "Do you want to survive?" She pressed. "Then stop thinking like a soldier and start thinking like a leader." Raynor took another deep breath, steeling himself. There was no time to waste. He couldn't let the weight of his beliefs blind him. The woman was right about one thing. His survival and the survival of his people depended on his ability to make difficult choices. He nodded slowly, determination settling in his chest. "I understand," he said, his voice firm. The woman's smile returned, but this time it was less mocking. It was a smile of respect. "Good," she said. "Let's see if you can live up to that promise." The ground rumbled again, and Raynor's eyes narrowed. The battle was about to begin, and there was no turning back. This part emphasizes the internal struggle Raynor faces, as he is forced to choose between his code and the harsh realities of war. It sets the stage for the intense test that will come. In the next part, let me know if you'd like me to continue. The unexpected offer Raynor stood motionless, the weight of his choices bearing down on him. The alien woman, with her calm but terrifying presence, had given him a chance to prove his worth as a leader. But as she turned and gestured toward the battlefield once more, Raynor's mind raced. The purifiers an enemy he had only heard of in whispers were now descending upon his world, and his every instinct told him that this was no ordinary battle. This wasn't just about winning. It was about survival, and perhaps more than that, it was about proving that humanity had something worth saving. "You'll need more than just ideals to stop them," the alien woman said, turning back to face Raynor. Her tone was surprisingly softer now, though no less commanding. "Your people are not prepared for what's coming. Even with your weapons, your strategies, none of it will matter unless you can think beyond the battlefield." Raynor's eyes narrowed, his mind focused on the new, terrifying reality. He had always been a soldier trained to fight, to lead. But now, the woman was asking him to do something more. This wasn't just a fight against a known enemy. This was an unknown, unpredictable threat, and he wasn't sure if his tactics and his code would be enough to stop them. The woman continued, her voice steady, but with an edge of challenge. "You've already made your choice, Captain. You've chosen honor over violence. But now, you must choose a new path, a path where your honor doesn't blind you to the brutal reality of the war you're facing." Raynor felt his stomach tighten. She was right. He had been so focused on his code, his personal beliefs, that he had failed to recognize the depth of the situation. He had thought honor would be enough to guide him through, but now he understood that the stakes were far higher than he had ever imagined. The alien woman took a step closer, her eyes locking onto his. "I will offer you a choice, one that will determine the future of your people," she said, her voice quieter now, almost as if she were sharing a secret. "You can fight with your own, continuing the way you've always known. But that will not win this war. Or you can work with me. I can teach you the skills to fight in ways you've never imagined, in ways that don't require the cost of every soldier's life. The choice is yours, but you must make it now." Raynor's thoughts raced. The alien woman was offering him something that felt too good to be true, an alliance with a being he barely understood, let alone trusted. She wasn't offering peace, not in the way he had envisioned it. She was offering a chance to win, but at what cost? What would he have to sacrifice to accept her offer? And could he truly trust her? "I don't trust you," Raynor said, his voice low but steady. "How do I know this isn't just another trick? You've already challenged my beliefs, my code. What else are you hiding?" The woman's smile returned, but it wasn't a smile of amusement. It was a smile of understanding. "You're right not to trust me completely, human," she said. "Trust is earned, not given. But I offer you a path forward. I can teach you how to lead your people in ways that don't rely on fighting, but on strategy, on understanding your enemy and your own strengths. This war, it doesn't have to be a slaughter." Raynor's heart pounded. The woman's words made sense, but they also felt like a betrayal of everything he had ever known. He had been raised to believe in the purity of battle, the honor of fighting face to face with his enemy. The thought of learning from this alien, of abandoning his old way of thinking, was almost too much to bear. But then he thought of the hostages, the people depending on him to save them. He thought of the future of humanity, his people. If he refused her offer, he was condemning them all to a slow death at the hands of the purifiers. If he accepted ... could he live with the cost? "I'll do whatever it takes to save them," Raynor said, his voice barely above a whisper. He didn't know if he was making the right choice, but he had to act. The weight of his duty as a leader was too great to ignore. The woman nodded, as if she had been waiting for his answer. "Then it's settled," she said, her eyes gleaming with something akin to approval. "I will teach you, Captain Raynor. I will teach you the ways of the galaxy, how to survive in a world where honor alone can be your undoing." She stepped back, her posture shifting from a commanding presence to one of calculated calm. "You will need to learn quickly. The purifiers will not wait. You'll have to put everything you thought you knew aside and adapt. Trust me, your people's survival depends on it." Raynor stood tall, his mind racing with everything the woman had just said. He didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was clear: he had to change. The battlefield wasn't just about weapons and tactics anymore. It was about adapting, surviving, and outthinking the enemy. The woman turned, gesturing toward the horizon, where the first signs of the purifier's ships were beginning to appear in the sky. "Time to put your new knowledge to the test. If you want to protect your people, you'll have to be more than just a soldier. You'll have to be a leader." With that, she began to walk away, expecting Raynor to follow and follow he did. The breaking point the first day of training was grueling. Raynor had expected the alien woman to push him hard. He'd anticipated a physical test, something that would force him to confront his limits. But what she had in store was far more insidious. Every movement, every lesson was designed to break him, to strip him of the soldier he had been, and rebuild him into something entirely new. The first hour was a mental exercise. She placed him in a simulation, a battlefield scenario so realistic it felt as if the air itself was thick with the stench of smoke and blood. He was back on Earth, fighting for survival, his team around him, fighting an enemy. But then something went wrong. His team members fell one by one, screaming in pain, leaving him alone in the chaos. "Make a decision." The alien woman's voice rang in his ear. "You've trained your whole life for this. Now you have to choose." Raynor's breath quickened, and his heart pounded as he watched the simulation unfold. There were civilians in the building. His team had failed to evacuate them, and now the building was about to collapse. If he stayed to save them, he would risk his team and his own life. If he left, they would die, but his people would survive. He froze, unable to choose. The weight of each decision crashed over him like a wave. What was the right choice? What kind of leader would he be if he abandoned his men? But was saving them worth losing everyone else? The alien woman's voice cut through the confusion again. "You can't hesitate. Leaders don't have the luxury of hesitation." In the simulation, the building collapsed. His team was gone, the civilians dead, and Raynor was left standing, covered in dust, facing the wreckage of his indecision. The simulation ended, but the weight of it stayed with him. His hands were trembling as he removed his helmet, staring at the blank walls of the training room. This was not what he had expected. He had imagined fighting direct combat, something he could understand. But this was different. This was not just about what he could do physically. This was about choices, leadership, and the consequences of every decision. The alien woman stood before him, watching him carefully, her expression unreadable. "You failed," she said simply. You hesitated. You couldn't make a choice. I didn't know what the right choice was, Rayner replied, his voice hoarse. There were too many lives at stake. I couldn't choose who to save. That's the problem, she said, her voice cool. You can't save everyone. And in the real world, there are no perfect answers. The longer you hesitate, the more lives you risk. The galaxy doesn't have time for indecision. It demands action, even when the cost is high. Rayner's mind spun. He had been raised to protect and defend, to save everyone he could. But what if that was the wrong approach? What if saving some meant losing others? He wasn't ready for this. He had never been asked to make a decision like this, one where lives were weighed against each other, where he couldn't afford to be the man he had always been. The alien woman stepped closer. This is the reality of war, human. It's not about honor or personal ideals. It's about survival. Your survival. Your people's survival. She led him to another simulation, one that forced him into an even more brutal situation. This time, there were no civilians, no team members to save. It was just him alone, facing a powerful enemy, a purifier warrior, bigger and stronger than anything Rayner had ever encountered. It wasn't just a fight to the death. This time, it was a test of endurance, of his ability to overcome fear and doubt. The simulation began, and Rayner faced the towering figure of the purifier warrior. Its glowing eyes locked onto him with an intensity that sent a cold shiver down his spine. He knew this fight wasn't just about winning. It was about breaking through the fear that had paralyzed him. In the previous scenario, he moved first, launching himself at the enemy, his fists pounding against the armored chest of the purifier. The fight was brutal, far more intense than anything he had ever experienced. Every blow felt like it could be his last, and each moment he wasn't fighting, each moment he hesitated, was another opportunity for the enemy to crush him. The alien woman's voice echoed through his earpiece. Fight, you cannot afford to. Hold back. If you hesitate, you die. Rayner's breath came in ragged gasps as he dodged the purifier's powerful strikes. He had to fight with everything he had. There could be no hesitation, no moment of doubt. He slammed his fists into the purifier's side, and finally, with a move he hadn't even thought about, he forced the enemy to the ground. The simulation ended in a flash of light. Rayner stood there, panting, his heart racing. He had won, but at what cost? The fight had been brutal, but it had been necessary. The alien woman appeared next to him, her gaze cold and calculating. You're starting to understand, she said, a faint glimmer of approval in her voice. You're not just fighting for victory. You're fighting to survive. But there is one more thing you need to learn. Rayner looked at her, still catching his breath. What else is there to learn? The hardest lesson, she replied, that every decision you make in battle will leave a scar. The question is whether those scars will make you stronger or break you. Rayner nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. The battle was far from over. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting to keep his soul intact in a world that didn't care about honor or ideals, and he wasn't sure he was ready for the cost. The hidden truth. Rayner's body ached, his mind spinning with everything he had been through. The intense training, the brutal tests, and the constant pressure of the alien woman's harsh lessons weighed heavily on him. Every moment felt like a battle, not just against the external enemies, but against himself, the soldier he had always been and the leader he was being forced to become. The alien woman had shown him how to fight, how to think differently, and how to make decisions. That could cost lives. But despite everything she had taught him, Rayner couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her plan than what she had revealed. One evening, as they rested in the training compound, the woman approached him, her gaze fixed with an intensity. That made him uneasy. "You've done well, Captain," she said, her voice cold, but with a hint of approval. "But there is something you still don't understand." Raynor looked up at her, wiping the sweat from his brow. The training had been grueling, the lessons hard to swallow, but he had made it this far. "What is it?" he asked, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "What else do I need to learn?" The woman took a step closer, her presence overwhelming. "There is a truth you've been missing. A truth that will change everything you've been taught about survival and leadership." Raynor's heart skipped a beat. "What truth?" he asked, his curiosity piqued despite the wariness in his gut. She paused for a long moment, as if weighing whether to share this information with him. Finally, she spoke again, her words slow and deliberate. "Humanity is not the only species facing extinction," she said. "You have been fighting for your survival, yes. But what if I told you that there are other forces at play? Forces far older than your species, and far more powerful. Forces that have been shaping the galaxy for centuries. And these forces are the real reason your people are caught in this endless war." Raynor's mind raced, trying to comprehend what she was saying. "What do you mean? What forces are you talking about?" The woman's expression darkened. Purifiers are not just a faction that opposes your ideals. They are part of a much larger plan, a plan that has been set in motion for millennia, designed to reset the balance of the galaxy. They do not just fight for control. They fight for the survival of a cosmic order, one that seeks to eliminate the chaos that your people and others like you bring to the galaxy. Raynor shook his head, disbelief coursing through him. "That doesn't make sense." "Why would? They want to destroy entire species? Why would they target humanity?" The woman's eyes hardened, and her voice lowered to a whisper. "Because you, human, are the catalyst. Your species, with all its potential and its unpredictability, is the key to the galaxy's future. The purifiers see you as the greatest threat, but not because you are weak. They see you as the most dangerous species, because you are capable of creating the very chaos they seek to eliminate." Raynor's heart raced. "So, you're saying we're the problem? That humanity is the reason for the chaos in the galaxy?" She nodded slowly. "Not exactly. It's more complicated than that. Humanity is a wild card, capable of great destruction, and equally capable of creating something new. The purifiers know this. They know that if your species is allowed to thrive, it will either spark a new era of galactic harmony, or it will unravel the fabric of the entire galaxy. That is why they seek to wipe you out." Raynor's mind reeled. The idea that humanity could be the key to the galaxy's future was both terrifying and empowering. But what did that mean for him, for his people? Were they destined to fight? For survival? Or were they simply pawns in a game far beyond their understanding? "You have a choice, Captain," the woman said, her voice soft but commanding. "You can continue to fight for your people, continue to hold on to your ideals, and you will be destroyed, along with everyone else who refuses to see the bigger picture. Or," she paused, her eyes narrowing, "you can join us. You can learn to wield your species' potential in a way that will ensure its survival and reshape the galaxy's future." Raynor's heart thudded in his chest. What was she asking? To join forces with the enemy? To abandon everything he believed in? Join? You? He repeated, his voice laced with confusion and anger. "How can I trust you? You've already broken every rule I've ever believed in. You've challenged my honor, pushed me to do things I would never do. And now you want me to join you in your fight?" The woman's face softened, but her eyes remained fierce. "I'm not asking you to give up your humanity, Captain. I'm asking you to see the truth. The galaxy is changing. The old ways of fighting, of holding on to your code, will only destroy you. You must adapt. And if you do, you will be part of something greater. A new order that will give your species a chance at survival. Raynor stood there, feeling the weight of her words pressing down on him. The truth she spoke was undeniable there. Was a larger game at play, and humanity was caught in the middle of it. But could he really give up everything he had ever known? Could he abandon his honor and trust in this alien woman, whose motives were still unclear? "I don't know if I can trust you," Raynor said finally, his voice quiet. "But I do know that if I don't do something, we'll all be destroyed." The woman's lips curved into a faint smile, and for the first time, Raynor saw something almost like respect in her eyes. "Then we'll fight together. And maybe, just maybe, humanity will be the ones to change the galaxy for better or for worse." Raynor looked out over the battlefield in the distance, the chaos of war still looming. He didn't have all the answers, and he didn't know if he could ever truly trust the woman standing before him. But one thing was certain: this wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. This was a fight for the future, and whatever happened, Raynor would be ready to face it head-on. A new era Raynor stood at the edge of the training compound, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the stars were just beginning to shine through the fading light. The weight of everything he had learned over the past few days, the brutal lessons, and the harsh truths revealed by the alien woman, pressed down on him like an anchor. The battlefield was no longer a place of simple combat. It was a chessboard, with each move carrying consequences far beyond what he had ever imagined. The stakes were higher now. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future. The woman had given him a choice, a path forward that could lead to the survival of his people or their destruction. It was a decision that no leader should ever have to make. The price of peace and survival was steep, and the road ahead was filled with uncertainty. The alliance she offered was tempting, but it came with its own set of risks. Could he really trust her? Could he trust his own instincts when everything he knew was being torn apart? "You're quiet today," the woman's voice broke through. His thoughts, and Raynor turned to see her approaching, her presence as commanding as ever. "Have you decided?" Raynor didn't immediately answer. Instead, he looked at her, considering her offer once again. She had shown him the truth. The galaxy wasn't a simple place of black and white. There were forces at work, powers far beyond humanity's understanding, and the purifiers weren't the only threat to the galaxy's balance. What she had said about humanity being the key to the galaxy's future weighed heavily on him. If humanity could survive this war, it could change the course of the galaxy if it didn't destroy itself first. "I don't know if I can trust you," Raynor said quietly. "I don't know if I can trust this path you're offering. But I do know one thing. My people need a chance." The woman's expression softened for a moment, and for the first time, she seemed less like an impenetrable force and more like a person, someone who had seen too much of the galaxy's darkness to trust anyone easily. "You're not the first human to question me, Captain," she said, her voice calm. "But I'm offering you the only way forward. If you stay true to your old beliefs, you'll lead your people to their destruction. There is no honor in dying for a cause you cannot win." Raynor's chest tightened. He had lived by his code for as long as he could remember. Honor had been his guiding light, the one thing that set him apart from the brutality of the world. But the galaxy wasn't a place where honor alone could save you. He knew that now. The stakes were too high. The galaxy had already begun to change, and if humanity didn't change with it, they would be wiped out. He couldn't allow that. "I'll fight," Raynor said, his voice steady. "I'll fight for my people, and I'll fight for a future where we can coexist, where we can survive. But I will not abandon my humanity. Whatever happens, I will stay true to who I am." The woman nodded slowly, her eyes dark with understanding. "You've made the right choice," she said, her voice soft but filled with resolve. "The galaxy is not kind to those who hold on to the past, But it is not beyond saving. You can change things, Captain. You can change your people's future. But only if you're willing to do whatever it takes. Raynor felt a surge of determination. The weight of the decision was still heavy on his shoulders, but for the first time in days, he felt like he was on the right path. He wasn't abandoning his beliefs, he was adapting them, evolving them to meet the brutal realities of the galaxy. He was willing to fight, but he would not compromise the core of who he was. He would fight for peace, for survival, and for the future of humanity. The alien woman turned and began to walk away, her steps purposeful. "Then come with me," she called over her shoulder. "The real battle begins now." Raynor took a deep breath, the uncertainty and fear still present. But now there was something else, hope. He had made his decision. The galaxy had no place for naive beliefs, but that didn't mean they had to lose everything. Humanity could find its place, not by fighting mindlessly, but by adopting and embracing the difficult truths of the world. He followed her, knowing that the path ahead would not be easy. The purifiers were still out there, their forces growing stronger with each passing day. But Raynor knew this was just the beginning. He was ready to face whatever came next, because now he had a purpose. He had a vision for the future, where humanity could be a force for good, where they could coexist with the other species of the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as equals. The stars above seemed to shine brighter now, as if the galaxy itself were waiting to see what humanity would do. The future was uncertain, but Raynor knew one thing. It was a future he would fight for, no matter the cost. This final part wraps up Raynor's journey, showing his evolution as a leader who is adapted to the harsh realities of the galaxy. He's ready to lead humanity into a new era, but the challenges ahead are far from over. Let me know if you'd like any changes or adjustments.